All right. Hey everybody, it's Chris. So my first video, I went through the unboxing and went through the parts of the CR-6 SE from Creality. Again, just to tell you, I had an Ender 3 Pro, or I have an Ender 3 Pro that has been modified. I got a glass bed, you can see the clips. I got a 3D printed cooler. I got a little attachment here, which actually is going to be a Pi cam. I got a custom case in the back. You can sort of see it where the Raspberry Pi is. There's a couple of other things I've done. I got a little tool holder, little filament guide, little things here and there. But I decided that I wanted to jump on one of the newer models from Creality, and so I got the CR-6. So after unboxing it, I actually have to tell you I'm a little impatient. So I didn't necessarily put it together, but I did go through some of the other steps that are recommended with a lot of 3D printers, and that is to tighten some screws, make sure everything's aligned properly, make sure nothing's loose, which is one of the things that I went through. Now, as I mentioned previously, I have watched other videos from other individuals, makers, YouTubers, who I will call out in the description and with links to their pages in the description. They really helped me and made me realize that 3D printing actually is fun and useful, and there are going to be some hiccups and problems, but for the most part, they're really easy to overcome. I have not seen any manufacturing defects on my Ender 3 Pro. It's all been alignment issues, G-code issues, or even firmware issues that I've been able to correct over time. So one of the first things I want to start with is the base of the machine for the CR-6. Like I said, I had gotten a little impatient and kind of went through stuff already, but it kind of helps me go through it again on video so that everyone can see what it is. One of the things I try not to do is take a lot of people's previous videos or whatnot and take them as the end-all be-all, because each machine is different. Each machine has its own little quirks, its own little adjustments and issues and whatnot. And one of the things I noticed in a lot of the other videos is that they tend to point out the flaws, and I appreciate that, but it's also not necessarily what I want to do in my videos. I don't want to point out all the bad stuff. I just want to point out the stuff that I see that either could be improved or is an excellent addition to the machine. Like I said, my Ender 3 Pro has served me well. I have, there's a little bit of sun glare. I have a lot of different prints that I've done that I'm really happy with. You got the flexible sharks, which of course is a spin-off of the different flexible animals that you can do. I actually messed a little bit with some dual colors. So I did a couple layers in yellow, and then I did the top layers of my gecko in green, which came out really nice. So it's not really all about the problems for me. It's all about what you can do with the printer and how to get there. I mean, I have had my own share of issues. For example, as I get to it, you'll see that one of my benchies just failed horribly. It came unstuck from the bed. But I like to keep some of the mistakes because it reminds me that, if it's not perfect, that's okay, because you're still going to run into issues and things that you need to fix. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong, but there's also a lot of things that can go right. For an example, I have this nice gold filament skull here that I printed out. It's got its problem. So when I took it off the bed, it broke and essentially took an entire piece of the bottom jaw off. But the detail is immaculate. I can't get over how well these things print and the details that come out in them. I kind of did the obligatory T-Rex skull, which I'm really happy with. I tend to do a lot of my stuff in single color because it's a lot easier. But again, the detail's not perfect, but it's exceptional. You know, it's really awesome how these machines kind of do their own stuff. I got a nice little 1911. Let's see, I got Brigitte from Overwatch, which is one of my favorite video games. I have half a Hulk, kind of stopped halfway. But again, it was a problem, but it's also interesting because you can see the infill, you can see just exactly what the printer does. It's not just the end product. I have a nice little turntable back there. So there's a lot of different things that you can print, which I find is awesome. So getting back to the CR-6, like I said, I went through it and did a couple things, but now I'm going to go through it a little bit more in depth, go over the items that were received and some of the things that I can point out that I find a lot of people should be familiar with. So the first thing again are a lot of the parts that came with it. Let me move these out of the way. So the first thing we got here is a couple of decals. Okay, we get a Achieve Dream Creality 3D with a little soccer player and a 3D printing industry evangelist for Creality. And that's it for that. I'll try to keep this somewhat organized because I don't have much. I mean, I have enough, but I don't have much desk space. We got, it looks to be like a inspection tag from Creality. So qualified certificate. Of course, most of it's in Chinese, but I'm not sure if this is an individual's name or if this is just Creality in Chinese, but it's a nice little cardstock, a nice addition. So the next thing we have is the 3D printer user manual, which I think is a great thing to include with a printer. The Ender 3 Pro came with one, but I didn't really look through it. And I kind of regret that because they've actually made it a lot, more user-friendly. Even though it is a Chinese company, they try really hard to get the English translations in there. And so one of the other things I don't really appreciate that some other people do is that they point out again the flaws. This wording of this sentence is funny. Why can't they get a better translator? Because it's not a small company per se, but it's a new company. They haven't been in business for very long, and so they're doing the best that they can. And that's one of the things that I don't want to do is, again, point out the problems. Okay, so we have the inventory, we have installation and putting it together. It goes into a lot of detail. I appreciate the pictures. They really do help a lot, in addition to the printed words. But pictures, as you know, they say a lot. And I'll just flip through it really quick because, it's a book. One of the nice things here is the circuit wiring. This may or may not be the actual card that's in the machine. I have yet to look at that. But it's nice to see how they put the different information in here, storage card, USB ports, reserved interface for quote-unquote future use, etc. Troubleshooting. This is really nice to see that it's in a flowchart diagram. If this, then that. That's really useful. And what I'm going to do really quick is close these. There, I should have done that earlier. I apologize. So the next thing we have here is the warranty policy, the after sales service card. This is nice because it lets you know exactly how to get in contact with them, as well as some of the things that you need to provide and whatnot. But that's a really nice addition. And then the last thing I have here that I haven't really seen in a lot of other videos is a caution sheet. So specifically it says it's recommended to use the Creality slicing software, which some people may do. I've become fond of Cura and their slicer. I've used Simplify 3D in the past, which I like, but I've just gotten so used to Cura that I use that. So it's recommended to use the Creality slicing software to avoid machine abnormality caused by different slicing instruction of different slicing software. So to me, that means that the G-code may vary from slicer to slicer. And it does state that if you are using other slicing software, please make sure that the G28 instruction under the Start G-code is the same or set as shown below. And specifically, it calls out G28, don't put X, Y, or Z coordinates, and then just put the G28 within there. I have on the Ender 3 Pro, I basically took a template and added my G28 and G29, and that was it. I did very little to change the Start G code. I know that in some situations you want to, but I never found the need to. So moving on to the actual bottom section of the printer. I'll go ahead and pull this forward a little bit. One of the things I noticed right off the bat was the serial number. I don't remember seeing one on my Ender 3, but this is nice because it shows that they're keeping track of their machines, whether it be certain lots that they manufactured or whatever. That's a good sign showing that they really are concerned with their machines. And of course, I read Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. A lot of people are unsatisfied with the way they handle Kickstarter, and that's a whole separate video, but I think they did a great job. And then, of course, you have your warning decal, don't touch, and the belt, you don't want to get your fingers in there. You want to get it caught under the rollers. It's a heated bed, so of course, you want to make sure that you don't touch it or leave anything on there that start a fire. And another thing that I noticed that I didn't really see on any of the other videos is they're actually showing you that the SD card belongs in a certain orientation. This is the first time I saw the sticker decal. It's actually covering the slot, so you need to remove it before you even put a card in there, so you're aware of which way it goes. And of course, you have the USB. And spinning it to the side, one of the things that I did off camera, again because I was impatient, was I loosened all of the screws, and I made sure that it had no wobble, made sure that everything was sort of as square as it could be, and then I retightened them, and I only did them finger tight. And for me, finger tight, let me grab a wrench real quick. For me, finger tight is holding the wrench this way, because if you can't turn it with this little bit anymore, that's more than tight enough. I don't normally do this because that's really cranking it down, and I don't feel the need to do that. Once it stops and you can't turn it anymore in this orientation, I feel that's more than enough. And then if you really want to wrench it down to 2,000 foot-pound torque, feel free, but I don't find it necessary. One of the other things that I noticed that a lot of people in other videos have called out is the machining in the rail. It actually allows you to sit the gantry in there, and hopefully, based off of manufacturing processes, and it looks pretty straight as far as I can tell, this will align it a lot better than the Ender 3, which did not have that cutout, and you sort of had to make sure that everything was flush and flat and square and all that good stuff. But that's really nice. Also for shipping, I like how they taped down the connectors so that they didn't get pinched and they were in the correct spot. So once you go and assemble this, the plugs are essentially in the spot where they belong. So this one goes to the Z motor on this side. On the other side, let me move this out of the way. You can see that one goes to the Z motor on this side. And then, let's see, I think that's it for now. But and then of course this one goes to, let me guess real quick. Okay, I give up. Oh, the display. That's right. That's probably the display because the display goes up here. Another nice thing is they've actually included these rail inserts, specifically over the top of where the power supply and the main board are, and they're just in there by friction. I'm just using a tool to pry up an end without breaking it, I hope. There we go. Okay. So you can see here it's just a little, get under there, a little plastic insert that pulls out. There's no adhesive. It's just, again, held in there by friction. But it blocks off these little hole vents or whatnot here that go down into the actual machine in there. So that's nice that they added that. The inner one, my camera skills are not very good, so I apologize. The inner one you can see is a lot more useful because you can see it drops down right in there. And you can adjust these. So like I said, like I showed you, I pulled it out. There's not a whole lot back here. You can move it up a little bit so it covers that hole a little bit more. So I can put it right there. And then it just pushes back in like that. And then while I'm here, I might as well do this other one. There we go. Just pull it up a little bit. Pick it up, and you can see this one drops in a lot closer. So you want to make sure that you cover that hole as best you can. So I'm just going to push this one up right about there. Push that in. Takes a little bit of force, but not terrible. And then that way, there's a little gap back here, but that's all right. That's not going to hurt anything. So moving around to the back of the machine, you can see that the power supply voltage setting is there, as well as our Y stepper motor. It's a nice little covered area. Again, to keep all the debris out, which is nice. You always have those little pieces of filament that fall out. So while I'm back here, you can see that it's currently set on 230. I'm in the US. So I'm gonna take a small little instrument. Doesn't have to be anything super special. And then you make sure that it's set to your proper voltage. And this is, as far as my machine is concerned, this is accurate. So if it's on this side, it's 230 volts. If the switch is on this side, it's 115. And you can also tell by whatever is showing. So it's showing 115, so that means it's set there. Okay. One thing I noticed when I was looking around the machine while we're back here is for the end stop. So you can see here for the Y end stop, it's a mechanical switch, which the Ender 3 Pro was. However, instead of using the bed itself, which on the Ender 3 Pro, it uses the undercarriage for the bed. On the CR-6, it actually uses a screw. So you can see there, that screw right in the center of the frame. It's a tight fit, so right there in my fingertip. That screw is actually what hits the, let's see if I can get a good shot. That's what actually hits the end stop switch. So if you do end up having some issues or you feel like it's not working in the way that it should, that screw may be bent, it may be not down all the way. So that's something you want to make sure you look at. And while we're under here, I'll point out the fact that there's no adjustment screws or adjustment knobs. It is a fully fixed bed, and that's based off of a couple things that I've seen and noticed myself. The Y rail is a lot wider, which provides a lot more stability. They're using the glass bed, which doesn't have as much an issue with warping. From what I've seen on my aluminum part, on the underside, it's pretty flat, so that's nice. Moving around to the right side of the rear, we can see a couple things that are pretty interesting. The first, of course, is our label. It points out the model number, build size, the actual machine size, basically the footprint, and the molding technology. In this case, it's an FDM. And then you have your power information on the right-hand side. So below that, on the back, you can see this is the cable that comes out for the bed heating. This is a lot more sturdy than the Ender 3 Pro, as well as the stress relief boot. I'm not sure what the official name is. It's much more robust. It's definitely not gonna give way. And this is a nice sort of open grommet to where it's not restricting it, but it is protecting it from the metal. And just for comparison over here, it is a custom case. However, you can see that this is utilizing the braided wire cover, which may or may not be as robust as the thick rubber we're using now on the CR-6. And also you can see that there's still a little bit of a way for things to happen to the heated bed cable. So that's not always good. Moving around to the right side or left side of the machine, depending on how you look at it. Let me get the cable out of the way. Again, we have the cutout within the rail for the gantry, which again, we're gonna see how well that fits in there. I can tell right away that you wanna make sure that this cable is out of the way. We definitely don't wanna pinch that underneath the axis, or excuse me, the gantry. There's a nice little hole down here for our ribbon cable, which we'll go over probably later, but you can see that it's a more unified connector. Instead of having all the little ones, the little white ones all over the place for the end stops, they're using more of a, I'll call it a serial port cable, but I'm sure there's another term for it. All right, and then let's see, there's not much under here. And we end up right back around to the front of the machine. So that's the exterior of the base in a nutshell. I forgot to mention we have a belt tensioner here, left to loosen, right to tighten. You don't want to have it too tight because then that actually affects how the components move. So you want it loose, but you don't want it sagging, and you don't want it to be falling out of the center, but you also don't want it so tight that you can't even move it. So that's a big thing. We'll go over the top real quick. You can see that it's a glass build plate. I'm sure there's another technical term for it, but I actually have the same exact one on my Ender 3 Pro, which I considered an upgrade. So everyone can see right away that it's much better quality. Depending on if you like the flexible bed plates to take off your prints, it really depends on what your preference is. I think the glass is nicer because it's less likely to warp or cause issues with any of the prints. Now, adhesion is a whole different topic. Adhesion is something that is different for glass and the spring steel or flex plate, whatever you want to call it. For the CR-6, they have these locking tabs in here, which again, I'm sure a lot of you have already seen. I'm just doing my own little take on the unboxing and go over for the CR-6. But once you undo those particular latches there, they're just compression latches. They sit on top of the glass to hold it in. Once you undo those, you can lift it up from the front, and you can see that there's nothing underneath, nothing holding it down other than those two clips in the front. In the back, we have what I consider to be spring steel. So they're kind of like, if you've ever used those paper clip things that don't have any handles. So these ones have the little metal handles. They actually have ones that you put on with a sort of tool. That's what that reminds me of. So you lift it up slightly, not too much, and then you can just sort of work your way out from underneath those spring steel tabs, just like that. I'll get a little bit closer. So there's no safety lip, so you could actually accidentally put it on top of it instead of underneath it. I would have liked to have a little bit of a curl up so that you know that you can get it under there a lot easier. And these are held on by, you can see them on the top here, these little screws, and then underneath there's little nuts. So it looks to me like they can be replaced if they break, or if you want to, you can put something else on there if you decide to design, or if someone sells like a third-party option. That's good to know. And so the only thing you need to be aware of when you put it back on is make sure that you get the glass underneath. You want to line up the sides so that they're even with the glass and the aluminum, and then gently push it back on. And once you push them back in, I haven't taken the plastic off yet, but once you push them back in, make sure everything's lined up. You just turn these tabs back in so that it's holding it back on place. A lot better than the paper clips here. These are still, of course, one of the best things ever for the Ender 3 angle glass bed. But these are definitely an upgrade direct from the factory. So these are nice. I don't see myself needing to replace these with aftermarket or anything. And that's the bottom of the Ender 3, or excuse me, man, the CR-6 SE. Next we're gonna go over the gantry, and then we'll start getting into more details as far as taking things apart and going over a lot of different aspects of the machine. So I'm gonna push this off to the side. Get that out of the way, and we'll pull the gantry out from behind. So one of the biggest things for me as an Ender 3 user is the dual Z screws, which I'll get to in a second in the back. But the front definitely has a different design. I don't have my original here on the Ender 3 Pro, so I can't compare it side by side, but it's a lot more aesthetic. You can see that there's a nice little design on the front. On the bottom, you can see that they changed their cooling duct to be a little bit more directional. It's more pointed towards the nozzle. Of course, there's your nozzle there. And then we have a mechanical end stop for the X-axis. Belt tensioner on the other side. Top, they have a nice little Creality logo. The extrusions are a lot nicer, a lot smoother, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. This is a little bit more industrial, I guess you could say. The Ender 3 is definitely not as refined. But again, it is still a decent machine. A lot of people buy it and use it. You'll see the unified connector here. Once we go over the internals of the nozzle and the area under this cover, you'll see how this connects to the rest of it, which I think is also good. Spinning it around, we'll get to more of the meat and taters here of how exceptional this new gantry is. You'll see the dual Z motors. There's one here and of course one on the other side. Both have lead screws that go up to, which I've seen as an aftermarket buy, but they have the belt between the two gears to make sure that they turn at the same time simultaneously. I've seen issues, or I've seen adjustments that may need to be done. Once you put the gantry on the base, you have to measure from the bed to the gantry to the X-axis to make sure that the distance is the same. You may need to loosen the coupler and raise or lower one side or the other depending on what the difference is. I may or may not need to do that. We'll just have to wait and see. Excuse me. So the other nice thing about this is the extruder clamp. I'm not sure if there's a more technical term for it, but you can see here that the extruder clamp just opens and closes depending on what you need to do. And then of course we have the filament runout sensor, which we're going to take apart. It is not mechanical. I found out that it is optical, but we're going to look at it a little bit more. You have the Bowden tube, goes down to the print head, and so forth. So that's the back of the gantry. Again, we're gonna sort of take some things apart in the next video, and we'll get into it.